Hello and welcome to Gerety Talks. My name is Lucia Ongai and I'm the co-founder of Gerety Awards, a global creative prize that is redefining the standard to which advertising has been traditionally held. Named for Francis Gerety, the copywriter that coined the slogan, "A diamond is forever," Gerety Awards marks the first time an international jury has been brought together to choose the best in advertising, all advertising, not just advertising made for women, through the female lens. Just like the awards, Gerety Talks will put in the spotlight some of the industry's true change makers with the aim to drive progress within the industry in a global scale. Today, I'm very happy to welcome three amazing creatives that were part of the Gerety jury. So we start with Ashika. Hi, Ashika, welcome.
Hi.
Ashika Chauhan is Digital Creative Director at Crow Group in the UK. Over the last 15 years, Ashika has worked in the UK and Australia on global, national, and local campaigns for household name brands. A natural polymath, she has grounding on everything from coding and strategy to concept and content production. She's fascinated by the role creativity has to play in the human experience and is most excited to see how brands can have a real impact on real people. She has been listed in the BIMA Hot 100 and Campaign Creative Equals Future Leaders, one to watch. Our second guest is Louise Sloper. Hi, Louise. She's an awarded creative director and graphic designer. After being head of art at CHI and Partners and B&B London, she left Atlant to set up her own studio, Here.We.Go, to challenge the traditional expectations associated with branding. She has been in numerous creative judging panels, and she is chairwoman of the Typo Circle, and she was named in the Drums Gerety Top 100 of UK Design Influencers and 2018 Pitch 100 Superwoman. Our third guest is Ciara O'Meara. Hi, Ciara. Welcome.
Hi.
She's a multi-award winning creative director at McCann, where she heads up the MasterCard account for UK and Europe, as well as new department McCann Demand. She began her career at Ogilvy in Dublin, then moved to independent agency Brando, and within 2 years, helped the agency win Ireland's first Digital Lion for O2. By evening, she volunteers with the She Says, helping create events and workshops for young women in advertising, and every other second left of her busy life is spent enjoying fun and games with her son. Welcome and thank you very much for being here, and also thank you for having been part of the Gerety jury. So we will start with a question about British creativity. So in a short video recorded in Cannes last year by Campaign magazine, several British creatives described British creativity with words such as witty, disruptive, dry understated humor with an intellectual strategic power, intelligent, stylish, eccentric, and punk is not dead. Do you agree with this? What do you think makes British creativity stand out and different from others?
Yeah, so I'd say that I definitely do agree with that. I think the one thing for me that stands out, having done a bit of travel and seeing advertising kind of in a few different locations, is that understated humour. And having worked abroad, also as creatives, our trust in the audience. So understanding that we don't have to put the actual punchline in all the time. We know that we don't have to necessarily spell everything out, but the audience is going to get what we're saying in an understated way, and I think that's quite special to British creativity.
Okay.
I think that I think the British get sarcasm and humour, and we've got a very different type of humour to that point. And I think that really does allow us to be a little bit more playful, or a little bit more eclectic with the types of work we do. And I also think our society over many centuries has been so diverse that we can pull into so many different cultures and reference points, which makes it more eclectic. And we are very progressive, I think, as British creatives in whatever field, not just advertising, and have been world leaders for quite a long time. That's why I'm particularly upset, I guess, when the government are not supporting the arts and supporting creativity, because it is something that's so unique and important as an export from the UK.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with both those comments. It's like, Creativity is such a strong British thing, and especially humour and wit. I mean, like, the best comedy series have come out of the UK when you think about, globally as well. So that's where I think that witty, really funny charm comes from, and what you see in a lot of the really great British adverts that, we all recall either from years back or currently as well. So it is just an inherent lovely thing to be able to keep in your work, and for clients to appreciate that style of work as well. Versus, I think, again, I've worked in different countries and humour or sarcasm doesn't really land, but it does really land with the British market, which is really great.
Speaking about differences and similarity, Ciara, you started in an agency in Dublin, then moved to Canada, and now you're in London. Did you find different ways of working in each of those places?
Yes, actually, really big differences. In Dublin, I think I worked in Ogilvy at first, which was very team orientated, and then I went to an independent agency for 2 years, and the creative department was like a mix of just individuals. I wasn't in a creative team. I used to work with the creative technologist, emotion designer. It was very, very different. And then I went to Canada, and it was a little bit team orientated, but they were open to hiring solos. And again, you would work maybe with the creative technologist sometimes. In DDB, for example, we used to have a mix of creatives on the floor. So we'd sit out and you could jam with different people. And then I realized when I came to the UK, it was very, very team-based. I had to have a creative partner. And that is kind of, I suppose, it may be because there's a lot more big agencies here, and there's a lot they inherently have been around longer, and those structures have been in place longer. So that people expect you to be in a creative team. So I did find that a bit unusual, and trying to kind of break into the industry as a solo was hard. Because also I think creative partnerships, they're quite an important thing. You don't want to just team up with anybody to get a job as well, because you want to make sure you're coming up with the best stuff and it's an enjoyable experience. So I would say they're the kind of difference that London, probably it's getting less so, but it is very team centric. In the creative departments, versus I think other countries are more open to different structures, but it's changing gradually.
And Ashika, you also have been in Australia and the UK. Any difference between those two places?
Yeah, so I think I agree with points made about the differences in teams and solos. I think that the UK does seem to be a lot more focused on having teams, but I'd also say that I've been lucky enough to be able to work in both a team and in solo at UK agencies. So I think it does tend to be the bigger UK agencies that kind of demand having that team. When you're in a kind of a mid-size or smaller agency, it is a bit more flexible. But I think the one thing that kind of stood out to me when I moved to Australia was actually kind of immersing myself in the culture, especially when you're trying to come up with creative that's relevant for another country's audience. Actually kind of trying to kind of immersing yourself into what is happening there. I didn't have a clue what Hungry Jack's is or was. I didn't know why MasterChef Australia was such a big deal. I didn't know what the project was, and I didn't have a clue about Aussie football or anything. And it's just a bit kind of like having to kind of immerse myself into that culture. What are people talking about? And not only within office banter, but actually how can I make creative that resonates with those audiences? So yeah, it was kind of jumping into that deep end and trying to immerse myself into that culture before I could feel really confident about producing creative that was relevant out there. And that was a really good experience. I think anyone that hasn't worked abroad, I think anyone, definitely recommend doing that, because it really makes you kind of step out of your comfort zone and go, okay, yeah, I'm going to learn this from scratch and I'm going to immerse myself in this, and kind of really massively change who I am personally in terms of my confidence of being able to just go to a country, not know anyone, start from scratch and immerse myself into kind of that culture essentially. So highly recommend it.
I think it's so true, because even the culture, one of my CDs when I went to Canada, he talked about the culture clash, and he said I really liked that. To Ashika's point, obviously I would look at them and their obsession with ice hockey and the love for Shoppers Drug Mart. If you're Canadian, people are obsessed with Shoppers Drug Mart. Like, you know, that I used to find that quite, like, I'd observe things that they probably took for granted, which is really good as well, because you kind of go, no, that's actually really interesting, because you're all like,
exactly.
great about that, or, you know, or that isn't actually, like, you know, no, that's a bit silly. You're getting like caught up in the small things. So it's really good, I think, sometimes to come from an outside perspective into a different culture. Yeah, and it's just a really fun experience to go somewhere else. I totally agree. And I'm always even saying it to any of like the teams that I've worked with, I'm like, you know, that's okay, times are different now, but as an industry, it's so great that it's all over the world, and you should take advantage of that and travel as much as you can with it.
I was going to say, with the travel, I mean, I haven't actually worked abroad, but I did spend a year in Australia living there. And but I was doing some voluntary work, so I wasn't specifically working in my field. But what I did find is that you learn so much more about that culture. And even if you get the opportunity to travel and stay in regions and learn as much about different areas and different countries and towns and cities and everything about those different countries, when you come back, it makes you a better creative, because you've got a much more broad perspective of the world. And often in UK agencies, you still need to do work for those different demographics and those different countries.
Yeah.
And understanding the difference in the way society works is super important. So even if you don't get the chance to work somewhere else, I think travel in general is absolutely essential. It's brilliant if you get the opportunity at some point. And you're never too old to do those things. I did that when I was much later in my 20s. It wasn't a gap year. So you can always do it.
Yeah, hopefully we will be able to travel normally.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which campaigns have you been most excited by recently? Or we also have our Gerety winners that were released. So do you have any favorite ones among the Gerety winners?
I really, like you, Lucy, I loved The Absent. I thought that was very thought-provoking. I thought it was really a really important thing to be addressing. Period poverty and that side of things is extremely important to be addressing from a female perspective, but across the world. I think it's a societal thing as well. It's something that isn't spoken about, it's taboo, and to put it into such a very straightforward way package was fantastic. On the flip of that, I absolutely loved, and this sounds a weird juxtaposition, but I loved Granny Got Pants as well, because we just needed some humor and some light entertainment, and it was so on brand. I think Sloggy, you know, that was right for the brand. It wouldn't have been right for many other people. So I think from Gerety, I thought they really sort of stood out. I think in terms of general campaigns over the last year, the Feed Our Future by The Garage, I absolutely thought was exquisite cinematography and a beautiful sound score for the UN World Food Programme. Really, really beautiful. It was a campaign of cinema ads, and the way it was treated was absolutely, it was so delicate and thought-provoking. And I thought that was great. I also think there was a brilliant takeover of Harrods in store, 360 3D scanning, crazy tech, amazing thing that has been happening recently. And I know that's not traditional campaigns as such from an advertising perspective, but as a designer, I guess, you know, I'm sort of immersed myself in some of those other things. And I think advertising is starting to become hopefully more aware of those things as well. I'm sure you guys from digital perspectives will have more to say on that as well. And I think the Design for Everyone recently was absolutely wonderful as well. That was Helen Rogerson and Angus Vine, some ex-colleagues of mine. And they created an awareness campaign for blind and partially sighted women to be able to get pregnancy results, and tackling that idea of privacy when you can't see, how much we take for granted in terms of having our own privacy if we can read something, whereas someone that isn't able to read something is not necessarily going to be able to do that by themselves. They're going to always have to have someone there. And that takes or strips away their own privacy and their right to privacy. So I thought that was very, very interesting, a really clever approach as well.
I actually had that actually down as one of my top things, Louise, for pregnancy tests, perhaps because it's something that happened to me a year ago. But yeah, you know, I think that's an amazing idea. And that's one of the ones that's really stood out to me this year as well, because, and I think there's some actually really good stuff in the Gerety units as well, but like that people are starting to notice actually we've all these things around us that we use daily, whether it is something simple like a pregnancy test that is a very emotional thing to me, but you know, when it's not thought of how everyone uses it, then it's actually not friendly. And it's the same actually with the, you know, obviously the McCann, like worldwide ones, they had the sign for good, you know, even like Alexa, like people who are blind, like can't, you know, or deaf, cannot be able to use that properly, or the Down syndrome one as well, about how people are interacting with it and it's not understanding what they're saying. I think there's a real like, so I think there's a real like nice shift this year and stuff that is actually helping, you know, others and not always going for the mainstream answer. And I mean, it's just, there's like some, that's really, really powerful stuff. And obviously the poverty, the period poverty one is a beautiful emotional film. It's just so heartfelt that you're drawn into the single girls, you know, just the simplest, like the simple way it is. And I really think there's a lot more to be done in that space, actually. You had, you know, a few years back, you had the tampon Axe book, but I think there's a lot more to be actually spoken about in that realm. One that actually didn't appear in the Gerety Awards this year, but I think is definitely going to be a big one, is Womb Stories. I think that's but being actually out of the industry for the year and getting to see what lands in actually outside of our world and what people talk about, that's the one that kind of people in my circle outside of the industry were talking about. So I think it's a very relevant one and very true about, again, like just talking about more about subjects about women's bodies and how, you know, like periods are normal and how that we, you know, need to just like take these things by the horns and just deal with them. So that's another one I think that is going to probably take up a lot of the awards again later on in the year.
Ashika?
Yeah, so I agree with the kind of campaigns mentioned. For pure entertainment, Granny Got Pants, absolutely love that. And then speaking about kind of women's bodies and experiences that aren't always acknowledged, I thought that Cards of Acknowledgement was a really kind of one that really stood out for me in this year's Gerety Awards. I think the fact that if you're on the side, you know, I've been in a situation where people around me have been in that situation and I've definitely felt lost for words. I haven't known what to say, and the fact that these cards are written by women who have been through that experience, I thought that was a really strong idea to connect with women who were in that situation. I also liked the ASICS Eternal Run. I thought that's a really nice idea of not actually having a physical finish line, and just the way that was shot, I just thought it was beautiful cinematography, kind of the whole location, the landscape, and just this idea of all of these people just running against themselves just to see kind of how they could get on, and I thought that was really kind of interesting. And then in terms of outside of Gerety, one of the things that stood out to me more recently was the B&Q Build a Life. I don't know if many of you've seen that, but Uncommon have kind of used kind of, I don't know if it's actually user-generated content or if they filmed it to look like that, but I think we've seen quite a lot of ads in that style, but this one still felt like it stood out for me because it had that strong messaging of DIY, you know, B&Q isn't just a retail brand, it's actually helping people to improve their lives and how it connects to people's you know, actual lives in terms of occasions, or, you know, throughout your lifetime you kind of remember when you're kind of improving your home or moving home or renovating, doing up the kids' bedrooms, things like that, real key kind of tapping into those real occasions in life. And I thought that actually sometimes, you know, I've worked on these kinds of retail brands and you sometimes think, oh, how am I going to be creative with this? I think it's interesting that they've built a platform that not only works on TV, but actually having seen some of the more hard-working retail executions, they've been able to carry that through into the retail executions really well as well. So I'm not sure if it's one of those things that will be kind of in all of the awards next year. But I just thought, as a consumer spending so much time at home at the moment, I thought it's kind of something that's really relevant right now.
It's working hard throughout the whole brand on all of the different platforms. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Also, there's Christmas campaigns are also a big tradition in the UK, with many brands doing great campaigns with lovely stories that are awaited for every year. What do you think these campaigns will look like this year? What ideas or stories do you expect to find?
I think there's going to be stories about, you know, the missing connections that you're like, you know, those moments that you're going to miss seeing family would probably be a big topic. But also maybe about the ones that, you know, the simpler Christmas we're all going to have, perhaps. Like, you know, going back to just, I think, you know, having 4 people in a house and not like 40, and how those emotional moments would be over Christmas. So I think we're going to see a little bit, maybe less tinsel and glitter, or perhaps people will go the other way and feel like we need all the tinsel and glitter that's possible because we need to be cheered up. But I do think obviously the idea of a smaller, simpler Christmas might be on the cards, from my point of view.
I think there's going to be quite a lot, personally, I think there's going to be quite a lot of really, I hope there's quite a lot of really joyful, playful campaigns out there, because we really, really do need it. And I am curious, actually, whether there will be more interactive campaigns. So like the fact that we're doing this on Zoom rather than in person, and everyone's saying we're going to have Zoom Christmas dinners and all of that side of things. I'm wondering if people might, and if it isn't happening, I've probably given someone a really good idea now. So,
great idea. I might steal that one.
But the idea of doing something interactive, I'm kind of curious whether that. I think if everyone does go on the very like the ads that had been coming out recently, in terms of it all being about being online and Zoom and playing it safe and being very, very serious and somber. I think that actually they're probably the ads that we're going to not remember, and they're not going to cut through. I mean, it's very interesting. I think I read the other day, Marks and Spencer's in the fashion, they've cut their Christmas TV ad because people aren't spending in the same way. So again, I think we're going to have some surprising, I think the stars of Christmas are going to be from places you're not going to expect. I've got this feeling, because we've just, our retail habits as consumers have changed. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a few unexpected brands stepping up and surprising us.
Yeah, I think there's going to be even more food advertising than there ever has been.
100%.
Yeah. I was the same thing about M&S, and they were like, oh, we're shifting all of our spend into our food ads. So I was kind of like, I already thought you'd spend all of everything that you could do on those food ads. But it's really interesting to see. Actually, I saw on social that Tesco were getting some flack because they had some party wear in their store, and I think it might have been Aldi saying, we know that you're all going to be in pyjamas, so don't worry about it, we're not going to be trying to be flogging any party wear to you. So I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, we work with a lot of food brands, and I'm wondering whether anyone's going to tap into this idea of, you know, you're not going to have your aunt and your uncle and your granny and everyone, you know, your mother-in-law to please. So actually, you know, is anyone going to be encouraging anyone to just, you know, if you want to just spend all day in your PJs and eat a burger and chips for Christmas dinner, you do that, you know. Just this idea of do what you want this Christmas, because actually you're not going to have to please everyone else. I think that could be an interesting angle for someone as well.
I'm also worried about.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm also worried about all the students, you know, that are like, you know, in lockdown. They're going to have their grannies and their mothers Zoom them and teach them how to cook a turkey dinner, aren't they? So, you know, there could be some fun, interesting things like that. People that have never cooked will quickly have to learn how to cook.
Very true.
And the three of you were part of the Gerety jury. Louise and Ciara had the chance, I was there too, to be able to meet in person for the jury session. Ashika, unfortunately, this year we had to do everything online. But still, what was your experience like? What do you remember about it? What did you like the most?
So weirdly, so far, I've done a couple of bits of judging over lockdown, and they've both obviously been virtual. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see when things do head back into a new normal, what kind of normal judging is like. And it was really great to see a couple of familiar faces as part of Gerety. But when you meet new people, it's always that level just a little bit nicer to meet in person. So I really hope that kind of that time does come sometime soon, because it is lovely doing things like this, but I think you just get that little bit more added value from being in person and being able to get to know someone in person. So but it's always great to see other females who are in a similar position to you. I've always been in agencies where there aren't that many more other females, so feel really lucky over the last few years where I've really kind of got to know more female creative directors, and I think it definitely makes you feel less isolated in the industry. And how I think sometimes you can feel like, oh, there aren't many of us, but actually once you get to know people you realize, oh wow, actually there are some amazing people. And as the years go by and the more of these kind of things that I do, I realize, wow, there's actually a lot more women out there who are in these kinds of roles who are amazing, and you just get such a good feeling from meeting other women in these kind of positions. And I learned so much from everyone that I meet, so it's always this really positive kind of good feeling that I've got from them.
I found it really, personally I found it absolutely wonderful. It was so nice. There was a couple of familiar faces like Ciara that we'd had the pleasure of working with each other in the past, so that was really lovely. But there was also, like you say, meeting new people, meeting new women, and really appreciating how many brilliant minds there are and people with really strong voices. But often we're overshadowed, or we're not PRing ourselves enough, or whatever it happens to be, we're not heard as much. And to actually sit in a room and without any worry to have a conversation, without any threat or feeling a little bit inferior or imposter syndrome, it was just really nice to sit and have a genuine creative chat with like-minded people, but from all different areas as well. So we were all, as you say, we were all learning from each other, and I found that really, really lovely. It was a good experience.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was also, wasn't it just amazing? I think I've never been in a room with that, because like, adds to both your points, like you're always either the one female in a team in an agency. There's not many of us, when you isolate us out, but to be in a room full of all creative women was really exciting. I was like, I've never been surrounded by so many female creatives. It's fantastic. That was really lovely, I think, and yeah, to hear and learn from all the different, expertise and different levels and everything. It was just a fantastic day. And yeah, I loved everyone got really passionate and really into it, the conversations about the work, which, yeah, nobody was holding back, which was great. I remember it was just really fun and positive, very positive. Like there was I didn't feel like nervous saying a point about work, which I think sometimes you can do sometimes in some juries, but yeah, it was really, really just a lovely day. And we had a little drink afterwards as well, I remember, which was nice.
Yeah. It's always nice.
In the old world. Yeah.
That's the main thing I missed out on. So I'll have to organise something next year.
Yeah.
Gerety reunion.
But I found it also really interesting, we all know, it wasn't even interesting, it was just obvious, but we all know we can talk about car ads just as much as the guys can. And it just, and we did. And I think, often it's assumed that we need to speak about the girly stuff. And yes, we've pointed out a few projects there that are quite close to our own personal hearts, like the period poverty and that side of things. But ultimately, we do have a view on just general stuff and living. And I think that's often forgotten, and we're often not given the voice. So to be in a room full of women all talking about that other stuff reminded you that you were making sense, and you did actually have a viewpoint on other things that aren't women's stuff.
Yeah. And also on the women's stuff, we were actually harsher, I think, as a judge, because we were like, nah, that's not, and we were just, you're literally, trying to sell us to a room full of women. Don't think it's going to be an easy thing. I think, yeah, that was the other side. But yeah, it was great, yeah, to talk about, the big car ads, there was booze ads, there was everything. It was just really fun. I mean, that's the great thing. When you've done a good judging session, you should feel like you've learned loads from someone's point out about some work and that you didn't see yourself. And yeah, I definitely felt that after the day. It was great.
Ashika, I read in an interview you said, brilliantly immersive content has the power to educate, to inspire, and to take us to places we had never imagined. With all the mobility restrictions during lockdown, did you have the chance of discovering more of these contents? Any favorite websites you visited you would like to share with us?
Yes, I think pre-lockdown, I think I wrote that article back when we were talking about kind of VR headsets and being transported to places like the moon and kind of escaping our everyday lives that were all, you know, you could already get out and about. So we needed to create experiences that were kind of even beyond. So, you know, getting into space. But during lockdown, it's very much about kind of getting back to basics. So I think a lot of people were on, the main thing I thought that stood out was Instagram Live. Kind of anyone and everyone was on it. So April and Jamie Oliver were doing a live cook along inside their actual kitchens. So, and then you've got Andy from Headspace and kind of John Legend doing live meditation. Chris from Coldplay was doing an intimate gig. And I found quite often I was watching kind of Instagram Live more than I was watching kind of TV or Netflix. So I thought that's quite interesting, because also kind of I live alone, so I thought it's quite an interesting way of connecting, not just, you know, using video calls to connect to people I know, but actually kind of the fact that these streams were live, it kind of felt in the moment, and that added level of kind of connection to other people, the fact that it was live. And I'd also say obviously kind of during lockdown, kind of TikTok has become massive as well. Just everyone's stuck at home, what are they going to do? They need something to entertain themselves, so they're either kind of just endlessly scrolling through, or they're actually getting involved in these dances. And I've seen people that I'd never think in a million years would be into TikTok, and anyone seems to be on it. And I was speaking to one of my team this week actually, and I was like, oh, you know, the charts at the moment seem kind of really upbeat, it's interesting. And she was like, yeah, it's because all of these tracks have been made, you know, everything's been on TikTok. Everything in the charts right now is because it's been kind of used in all these kind of TikTok videos. And it kind of hit me, you know, how this platform that's kind of suddenly come along is really impacting culture on a wider level, you know, impacting the music industry. So I'd say, yeah, they're the kind of two things during lockdown that have kind of been different, kind of not necessarily taking us to other worlds like I was talking about back, you know, a couple of years ago with VR, but actually getting back to basics and what can we do at home, how can we have more connection, how can we entertain ourselves, and yeah, it's been interesting.
And what about you, Louise or Ciara? Any favorites during lockdown?
Well, I mean, to your point about TikTok, I guess one thing we did become was curtain twitchers. Is that the right expression? I mean, I set my desk up by my main window, and I got to see my neighbours for the first time. I live in like a cul-de-sac and flats with houses as well. And I saw loads of people, and I saw so many mums coming out and suddenly doing this in the background. And you could tell they were filming themselves on TikTok with their daughters and sons. And that was really surprising. So I didn't partake in any TikTok because it was one extra platform too many, and it sort of blows my mind a little bit. But what I did get into more was understanding sort of more augmented reality online. So I've been teaching myself with Spark AR and playing with that, because also filters exploded during lockdown. And again, it's because we were on Instagram more and we were playing more, and people had a bit of time to play. So I was really excited to learn those sorts of things. And I guess the Calm app to me was something that was absolutely essential, and still is actually, because my sleep was disrupted, and there's lots of reports of why. But using the meditation apps and slowing down and listening to audiobooks and stories, that was really, really amazing. And actually that helped me as a creative to sort of expand my mind a bit and absorb stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, I think my lockdown use of technology was probably very different to both yours because of having a small baby. So I would say, yeah, I actually saw that Coldplay thing live, and I thought that was he was even a bit nervous, which I liked about it as well. That kind of showed you even more, like even they don't know what they're doing. But my life entailed a lot of Instagram filters with my son, and I used two apps that were really big for me actually were it's a thing called Huckleberry, and it's a thing that actually you monitor like all, you know, times and sleeps, and gives you little tips what to do with your baby because you're clueless. But it was just, I discovered all these new kind of applications that I never knew existed because my life has been turned upside down. So there's a lot of stuff there that like I found that really interesting, that I'm like, wow, I never knew like Hoop existed. I never knew all these like literally like baby games on apps, like just so many things that I think that we probably don't know, like there's a huge market in that as well that we don't necessarily realize people use. And I think, yeah, I've gotten into trying to do some like getting back and getting my body in shape. So I was using some meditation stuff, especially on Headspace. And then I started using Noom, which I thought was really good. Actually, it's an interesting app that kind of tries to get people to get fit, but being actually challenging your expectations and why your mind is not wanting you to be fit or what you should do. But yeah, I had a very different, I suppose, I didn't really see much of the advertising world version of apps and gadgets, but I had a lot of baby gadgets going on in my life during lockdown.
Baby gadgets.
Yeah. But yeah, podcasts actually, because I used to always go out every single day and still do for a walk with him. And that's something that I've always really liked anyway. I used to always I'm a big fan of podcasts. If you've got any to recommend, fire them my way. And that's kind of was really nice, actually. I love Fern Cotton's Happy Place, and she's doing some great, that was, I think, has really taken off as well during lockdown in a bigger scale. But there's some really nice podcasts out there that actually just, if you just want something to relax you, or you just, there's something for every mood you're in. And it's basically, I think we all miss the radio. It is the radio. So the radio in other form, which is such a lovely thing, actually.
It's very true. I was listening to the radio a lot more. I was putting BBC Sounds on a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, it's same here. I listen to BBC, like BBC 4 or BBC 5 Live, like every morning. And I don't know, I think that's just kind of nice to, we've all been rushing usually after work. Now we can actually enjoy our homes and put the radio on. While when you're in the office, like everyone's like, oh, should we put on a playlist? Like, and who's picking the music? And now you can actually enjoy what you want to listen to while you work, which is quite nice.
Yeah. And Louise, your bio says you left Atland to set up your own studio, Here.We.Go, to challenge the traditional expectations associated with branding. What would you say are those expectations, and what are the biggest challenges?
Well, I mean, I think it's going back to what we've been talking about at the beginning of this, about being put into a box. As a designer in advertising, I guess, not always, but often there was a pigeonhole and there was a box that I was put in. Like you were saying, Ciara, about teams as well, same idea. And I've always been very, very curious. I like to try stuff out. And I will find that sometimes traditionally, particularly if you were doing branding in advertising agencies, that you were sort of assigned to doing the logo and the color system and making things look pretty with the typography. And I'm fascinated in the use of sonic branding and augmented reality. And I'm not saying you use tech for the sake of tech, but bringing things to life. I remember working on a logo for a brand. And I had this idea of it being living, and every time you clicked, the colours would change relevant to the news stories you'd been writing beforehand. And so I went to the creative technologist, and he literally just came up. I thought it would take him days, and like the next morning, he just turned up and goes, "Here's your algorithm." So I was quite stunned by that, and I absolutely loved working with people like that. Like you say, like Ciara in Dublin, you were saying, you had the opportunity to work with these sort of people. And I was finding I was getting a little frustrated that I didn't have the opportunity in my role to be working on the things I was excited about. So I love brand storytelling. So, and there are so many different parts of that. There's so many different, it's the whole brand ecosystem. So I left to set up a studio. It's a very small studio. It's a collective. I sort of work with people on a project basis, depending on the types of people I need to make that idea come to life. And I'm playing. I'm actually having the chance for the first time in many years to actually play, and I'm the boss, and I can decide who I work with and how we go about things, and clients are trusting me with that, which is fantastic as well, and taking them on the journey and give it, because it adds more value to the client at the end of the day. So I guess that's what I mean by traditional branding and what's seen as traditional branding. A lot of the design agencies are doing this anyway, but advertising, when they was looking at branding, wasn't necessarily as up to date in many ways as maybe some of the design agencies there. So it's taking the shackles off and being allowed to sort of do it my way now.
Yeah, I feel kind of just relating to that point about kind of teams separated. I feel really lucky with how we've set up our current team, because our developers and our editors and our animators all sit in the same room as the creatives and creative directors, and it has made our work so much more elevated. You know, it's not just a case that the creatives go away and think of the idea and then it's kind of put kind of at the very end the developers will see it. We've tried to kind of come up with a way where we're collaborative from the start, and I think working from home, you know, we've kind of had to force that a little bit more. It's so much easier when you are in that one room, but it's kind of really helped us with the work that we were producing, because the old kind of advertising model of kind of an art director and a copywriter come up with the idea, and then it gets pushed down to the designer, and then it gets pushed down, you know, and by the time someone's editing it or animating it, they're kind of just like, what am I doing, or what was the point of this kind of thing?
And that journey, and
yeah, exactly.
Making great creative is holistic. You need to all be working together and listening to each other and having input at any one time. And I think that sort of very linear formula isn't really suitable for creative output of, you know, at the moment, and how the world's changing. The consumer's asking for all these things, yet we're trying to look at it in a very linear, old-fashioned process often. And there's so many different people that are needed to bring something to life, and everyone has a voice and everyone should be listened to, is how I believe anyway. So, and then you sort of pull the best bits, put it all together in a bundle, and then you've suddenly got this amazing, beautiful brand storytelling, sort of an ecosystem. So yeah, absolutely agree. It's quite tricky doing this over Zoom. It's difficult. I do miss not being able to put things up on the wall and scribble all over things, and just have those random conversations over a desk or over a coffee where brilliant ideas come out. But there are ways you can do this. I was chatting to, again, some designers yesterday, and they were using Mural a lot to try and replicate that creative wall. And it was actually something I hadn't heard of and I hadn't been using. So I'm going to be checking it out this week.
It's good though, isn't it? I mean, like, I think obviously my first week back in work this week, but like, yeah, trying to have those creative chats is kind of different, isn't it? Even when you're having a creative like review and kind of like trying to help people think of ideas or to elevate stuff, it's a bit more formalized now. But still, I think you can still have like we are now, having a really interesting conversation and discuss things. But the best work definitely comes from more people together, because, you know, and especially I think like to the kind of work that we need now, it's fast moving, that it's, you know, relevant, everything is it's more culturally driven than ever before, because of the pace of like where everything's on TikTok instantly, people are making their own content instantly. But yeah, because even when like I always thought that was my first experience properly working advertising like that, and then I was just like, I thought that was normal. Then it's like whatever you learned first you think is normal, right? So then you're like, well, why does everyone else not work like this? And, you know, I've kind of always tried to keep that in places that I've gone, no matter even if the structures are, oh yeah, you need to be in a team. Like, I remember even when myself and Lou worked together, I would go over and chat to you, and I just would be like, we need to talk, like, you know, why are we you don't just ship this over to you like it comes on a, you know, flown over. We need to discuss the thing together. And yeah, it's even like I've even trying to do that at McCann before. Obviously, lockdown, I was trying to get like startups in, like, you know, like people who have like a beta version of something that they're like trying to figure out what you could do with it. And I was like, you know, come in and chat to the creatives. Like, we want to talk to people like you, because there could be something really interesting. We can team you up and do like a really cool thing with a brand, or maybe we could just do something fun and give you some fun ideas. And that's what I was kind of trying to do. So hopefully I'm going to try and keep doing that over Zoom on this way. But also the great thing about this way of working is that you know, now you can get hold of loads of different people at the same time. They're different disciplines.
That is actually a really good upside to it. Yeah, there are a lot of positives to this way of working, definitely.
Yeah.
And Ciara, I know you draw your Twitter followers and have sketches of over 600 portraits for your blog, hashtag Twitter followers sketches. How did you come up with this idea, and what feedback did you have from the people you have portraited?
Well, yeah, I'm still drawing them, but I've only drawn a few this week, but I've been obviously on a hiatus. Or my little boy was trying to tear every piece of paper out of my hand when I tried to draw. But I actually came up with the idea when I was in Canada, actually, and Twitter was everybody's like, everyone's on Twitter, need to be on Twitter. And I was like, well, if I join Twitter, like, what am I going to talk about? Like, I don't know if I want to be one of those people who tells everyone my business all the time, or like, you know, I suppose it's like the dilemma of when you join Instagram, do you show what you eat all the time? So I was really kind of trying to think of like, oh, what should I do? And I remember I was chatting to like my creative director about it, and he was like, well, you know, take it as like, think of it as a little brief, what you want to use it for. And I was like, you know, I kind of really wanted to practice drawing, because the amount of times I've presented storyboards to like bosses in the past, and they were like, is that an alien? What is that? And you know, as an art director, I said, you know, I'm obviously an art director and a writer, but like more so an art director, I love to draw. It would be just, you couldn't really understand what I was showing. So I thought, like, okay, you really need to take this seriously. And I thought, okay, I'd love to actually just draw loads of people, but I don't want to be that weirdo in the park staring at somebody awkwardly, or that person on the tube like staring at them. Where can I find all these faces and like practice on my own time? So that's really where the idea came from. I thought, like, oh, I'll just draw people on Twitter and their profile pictures, and then I can practice that way. And so I started with, actually the first drawing is of my creative director in Canada, Dre LeBray, and it's awful. It's absolutely horrific. And I kind of give myself, I only do it once. I don't, like, I'm not allowed to redraw. Like, it's like practice. It wasn't for like, you know, for me to get attention. It was for me to actually do something for myself. So I want to like see how much I improved. And yeah, like it's just great to look back and actually see how bad the first ones were. And this scale is I'd like to think gotten better, but some of the profile pictures that I've drawn are like bizarre. Some of them are awful, like really boring, like just like, you know, some kind of really bad logo. But yeah, I thought it was just a fun way to use Twitter, because I didn't want to be, you know, one of those people that just said random stuff. Yeah, so that was kind of like the idea where it came from, and it's kind of grown from there. And yeah, I've gotten more and more people obviously follow me for one, and I get like sometimes hassled, like, when's my sketch coming? Like, I followed you like 3 months ago, and I'm like, give me a break. I've got like nearly 1,000 followers. I've got like to get through all these people. So yeah, it's a fun thing, and it's just something I do every morning with a coffee that I used to do at work, and I am doing now, started again this week. So it's just a nice way to start the day with a little doodle. And I'm really keen to try and do a book with them eventually. When I eventually catch up on all the followers, I'd love to do a little book with them and see if anyone wants to see it. But yeah, that's where it came from.
Great. So let's finish with a last question for all of you. If you had to choose a word to summarize 2020, what word would you choose, and what word would you like to choose for next year?
Oh, it's so tricky. One word.
Yeah.
Just one.
There is one word that everyone's used loads. We all know that one. I mean, I want to, for me, it's been a very different year for a lot of people. I've had like quite, I suppose, a life-changing year, because I've become a mother. So it's very different. It's been a really, I would say for me, it's been a joyful year, but I don't know if that's for everyone else, but it depends really.
I think mine's been, I'd say, enlightening, because I have gone on lots of a whole journey, both career, in myself, giving myself a little bit time to rest as well. And for a number of personal reasons, I've sort of really had the space for the first time ever to actually think a bit more and feel a little bit more calm and decisive in myself, because you're not rush all the time. And I think for that reason, it's been a period of, I think it's been a year that's it's flown past so quickly, it's untrue. But when I look back about all the different things that I've felt throughout this year, I do feel from the end of the year, I'm coming out in a very positive perspective, because I'm much clearer in my mind about me as a human, what I want to do for the future, and how I can sort of help people as well going forward. So yeah, enlightening, I think.
I'd say unforgettable for this year. I think it's one of those years where I look back a couple of years ago, I'd probably be just kind of like, oh, what happened that year? But I think 2020 is one of those years that everyone's going to remember as like, okay, yeah, that was a year of COVID, and even everything that's happened with Black Lives Matter. I think that you know, I hope that doesn't just disappear. I hope that real changes come out on the back of that. And then for next year, I think kind of I'd like to see kind of use this idea of renewal. You know, what have we learned from this year? Is there something positive that we can take into next year? And certainly for myself, it's kind of, you know, I've been the same in terms of using kind of the meditation apps like Headspace, and kind of I think it's really kind of spending so much time at home really makes you kind of step back about yourself and your life and what you're doing, and kind of hopefully I'll have a little bit of kind of renewal in my own life as well in terms of what I want to do and that kind of thing. So it's yeah, it'll be interesting. I think a lot of people will come out, so hopefully kind of there will be an end to COVID and what that means for us.
Yeah, I think that for next year, actually, I didn't like, you know, for a word that would encapsulate that would be, hopefully there will be balance that we come out with, isn't it, really? That we all have, I think the good thing, people are getting this working from home or time out, or like, you know, even to your point, Louise, trying to figure out who you are and like more so what you really want to do. I think that's what everyone has done this year, is really had to really like search within themselves, like, because, you know, whether being isolated from friends, family, work colleagues, and that hopefully all the things we've learned, that they actually, and like Black Lives Matter, that all those things that have been massive, big, I suppose, world-changing topics, that they have created some kind of balance that we keep in the future. It'd be great.
I think for next year, really, I guess I was thinking power, but actually the reality is I think it's empowerment, because we have had this year to really reflect on so many different things. Businesses have had to change. There's been so many different movements, as we as people have had to think very closely about our own relationships and home life. Society's had to reflect a lot and really do a lot of soul searching. And I think we're empowered with knowledge, and we're empowered with renewed confidence to take some of those things further forward, and hopefully that will, and even down to working from home and having some more work-life balance, actually, I think is going to be one of the biggest things that come from this. So I think that might be my word for 2021. Hopefully, yeah, it'll go that way. Who knows?
Let's all hope for the best for next year. And so thank you so much for sharing all these insights with me and with us. And also thank you for being part of the Gerety jury. And hopefully we will be able to see each other soon without having a screen in the middle.
Yeah, for a drink soon, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye. Good to talk to you.